Daddy, will it hurt when I go to heaven? Those 7 words shattered Richard Hamilton into 1,000 pieces he'd never be able to put back together. His 8-year-old daughter, his Emma, with her bright blue eyes and missing front tooth, stared up at him from the hospital bed in Manhattan Presbyterian, waiting for an answer he didn't have. The machines around her beeped steadily, counting down the time she had left. 2 weeks, the doctor said. Maybe less. Richard's hands trembled as he gripped the cold metal bed rail. Outside, the October rain hammered against the window like angry fists, but inside this room, the silence was worse. Emma's small fingers reached for his, and he felt how fragile they were, paper-thin skin, tiny bones that shouldn't have to carry the weight of death at 8 years old. Would you know how to answer your child's last question? Subscribe now. Some stories change you forever. Drop a comment where you're watching from. No, baby, Richard whispered, his voice breaking. It won't hurt. I promise. But promises meant nothing anymore. He'd promised to protect her. He'd promised she'd grow up, go to college, get married, have kids of her own. Now the only promise left was that in 14 days, she'd be gone. The diagnosis came that morning like a bullet through the chest, stage 4. Rare blood disorder. Untreatable. Terminal. The lead specialist, a gray-haired woman with kind eyes that couldn't hide the truth, had delivered the news in a voice that sounded rehearsed, like she'd done this 100 times before. Maybe she had. I'm sorry, Mr. Hamilton. We've exhausted every option. Make these last days count. Make them count. As if Richard Hamilton, self-made billionaire, Wall Street titan, the man who'd turned $5,000 into a $3 billion empire, couldn't buy his daughter more time. He'd called every specialist from Boston to Los Angeles. He'd offered $10 million to anyone who could save her. 20 million. 50. It didn't matter. Money was useless when death had already made up its mind. Richard turned away from Emma's bed, pressing his forehead against the rain-streaked window. Below, Manhattan moved on, taxis honking, people rushing to meetings that felt important but weren't, lives that would continue while his little girls ended. He caught his reflection in the glass, 52 years old, silver hair, expensive suit. The face of success. But what did any of it mean if he'd failed at the only thing that mattered? The memories hit him like waves he couldn't fight. Emma's first steps, he'd missed them for a merger meeting in Tokyo. Her kindergarten graduation, he'd sent his assistant because he was closing a deal in Singapore. Last year's birthday, he'd been on his yacht in the Mediterranean with clients while Emma blew out candles alone with the nanny. He'd always told himself there'd be time later. Time to make it up to her. Time to be the father she deserved. Now time was the one thing he couldn't buy. Mr. Hamilton. The voice was soft, almost afraid. Richard turned to see Carmen Davis standing in the doorway. His maid. 28 years old, African-American, with gentle eyes that were always red these days, like she'd been crying when no one was looking. She'd worked at his Vermont estate for 3 years, quiet and reliable, the kind of person who faded into the background of his busy life. But today, Carmen wasn't fading. She stood frozen in the doorway, clutching something against her chest, a worn leather journal and a sealed manila envelope. Her hands were shaking. Tears streamed down her face. Richard barely acknowledged her. Not now, Carmen. She didn't leave. Instead, she took a step forward, then another, her whole body trembling like she was walking towards something terrifying. Sir. I need to tell you something. About Emma. Richard's jaw tightened. The doctors already told me everything I need to know. No. Carmen's voice cracked. They didn't. They don't know what I know. Something in her tone made Richard pause. There was more than grief in her voice, there was guilt. The kind of guilt that ate people alive from the inside out. What are you talking about? Richard demanded. Carmen glanced at Emma, who'd fallen into a restless sleep, her small chest rising and falling too quickly. When Carmen looked back at Richard, her eyes were filled with a desperate, terrifying truth. "I've been watching over Emma every single day for 3 years," Carmen whispered. "Not as a maid. As penance. For something I did. Something that's been killing her slowly, and I'm the only one who knows why." Richard felt ice flood his veins. "What did you do?" Carmen's hands shook as she held out the envelope. 9 years ago, I was a nurse at Mercy General in Georgia. Your wife brought Emma there when she was just weeks old, a routine procedure, nothing serious. I was assigned to her case. And Her voice broke completely. "I administered a blood transfusion. But the blood was contaminated. The hospital knew. They covered it up. They fired me, threatened me, made me sign papers swearing I'd never tell anyone." The room tilted. Richard grabbed the bed rail to steady himself. "You're saying you poisoned my daughter?" "I didn't know." Carmen sobbed. "I swear to God, I didn't know. But I've spent every day since trying to find a way to fix it. That's why I found you. That's why I came to work for you. I've been searching for a cure, a treatment, anything. Get out." Richard's voice was deadly quiet. "Please, Mr. Hamilton, there's a doctor in Los Angeles, Dr. Rebecca Collins. She has an experimental treatment that could. Get out. What she reveals next will leave you speechless. Subscribe before this truth destroys everything. Tell us in the comments, where are you watching from?" But before Carmen could move, before Richard could say another word, Emma stirred in her sleep. Her small voice, weak and fading, drifted across the room. "Carmen, don't leave me." Carmen promised. "Carmen knows the secret." Richard's blood went cold. He looked at Emma, then at Carmen, whose face had gone pale as death. "What secret?" Richard's voice was barely a whisper. Carmen's eyes filled with tears that held something beyond guilt. They held hope. Terrifying, desperate hope. "There's a way to save her, Mr. Hamilton. But you're not going to like what it costs." She opened the journal. Inside, pages and pages of medical notes, research, desperate scribbles. And on the last page, circled in red ink, 4 words that would change everything. "I'm the only match." Richard stared at those words, his mind refusing to understand. Match for what? Carmen met his eyes, and in that moment, Richard saw the truth she'd been carrying for 3 years. The weight that had bent her shoulders, the guilt that had stolen her sleep, the reason she devoted her life to watching over a little girl whose death she'd caused. "For the bone marrow transplant," Carmen whispered. "The procedure that could save Emma's life. I'm the only compatible donor in the National Registry." She paused, her voice dropping to almost nothing. "But the survival rate for the donor is 30%. If I do this, Mr. Hamilton, I'll probably die saving her." The machines beeped. The rain fell. And Richard Hamilton, the man who'd conquered Wall Street, who'd built empires with his bare hands, who'd never hesitated to make the hard calls, found himself facing an impossible choice. Trust the woman who killed his daughter to save her life. Or watch Emma die in 2 weeks, knowing there was a chance he threw away. Richard Hamilton stood alone in the hospital chapel at 3 in the morning, a place he hadn't visited since his wife's funeral 6 years ago. The small room smelled of old wood and desperation, the scent of people who'd run out of options and turned to prayer as a last resort. He wasn't here to pray. He was here because he couldn't breathe anywhere else. Carmen's words echoed in his skull like a death sentence, "I'm the only match. If I do this, I'll probably die saving her." The woman who poisoned his daughter wanted to sacrifice herself to fix it. Richard's mind spun in circles, unable to land on rage or gratitude, justice or mercy. Every instinct screamed that trusting Carmen was insane. But what was the alternative? Watch Emma slip away in 2 weeks, knowing a chance existed. His phone buzzed. A text from his head of security, background check complete. Sending full file now. Richard opened the attachment with shaking hands. Carmen Davis. Born in Atlanta, Georgia. Graduated nursing school at 22 with honors. First job, Mercy General Hospital, pediatric ward. Then, nothing. A 3-year gap in her employment history, followed by domestic work under assumed references. The gap matched perfectly with Emma's contaminated transfusion. Richard scrolled further. Hospital records he'd paid $50,000 to obtain showed the truth. Carmen had confessed. 17 babies received tainted blood between 2016 and 2017. 15 died within 2 years. 1 went blind. Emma was the only survivor still living, but barely. The hospital's parent company, Castellano Pharmaceuticals, had buried the scandal with settlements, threats, and destroyed evidence. And Carmen had been the scapegoat. Fired. Blacklisted. Silenced. Richard's hands tightened around his phone. Castellano Pharmaceuticals. He knew that name. His hedge fund had invested $40 million in their stock 7 years ago. He'd profited nearly $8 million from that investment. He'd made money from the company that killed his daughter. The chapel door creaked open. Carmen stood in the doorway, still wearing her blue maid's uniform, her eyes hollow from sleeplessness. She didn't step inside, just hovered at the threshold like she didn't deserve to enter sacred space. "I'll leave if you want," she said quietly. "But there's something else you need to know before you decide." Richard didn't trust his voice, so he just nodded. Carmen pulled out her phone, scrolling to a video file. "This is from 3 months ago. I didn't know Emma had recorded it." She pressed play. Emma's face filled the screen, healthier then, smiling despite the fatigue in her eyes. She sat in her bedroom in Vermont, wearing her favorite red shirt. "Hi, Daddy," the recording began. "If you're watching this, Miss Carmen finally told you the truth. Please don't be mad at her. I already knew." Richard's heart stopped. Emma's voice continued, small but steady. "I heard you and the doctors talking last year about the transfusion when I was a baby. I looked up Mercy General Hospital online. I found the news articles about the lawsuit before they got deleted. I saw Miss Carmen's name. And then I saw her working in our house, and I just knew." Tears ran down Richard's face as he watched his daughter, his brilliant, beautiful girl, speak from the past. Some truths break you. Like and subscribe, this story gets harder. "I asked her about it 6 months ago," Emma said. "She cried for like 2 hours. She said she came to work for us because she wanted to make sure I was okay, even though she knew you'd hate her if you found out. Daddy, she's been taking care of me every single day. When I got scared at night, she stayed with me. When I felt sick, she held my hand. She loves me, Daddy. I know she does." Emma's face grew serious, more adult than any 8-year-old should be. "Miss Carmen told me about Dr. Collins in Los Angeles. She told me about the donor thing, and how dangerous it is for her. I told her not to do it, but she said she has to. She said some mistakes can only be fixed by giving everything." Emma's voice cracked. "Daddy, if she saves me and something happens to her, you have to promise me you won't hate her. Promise me you'll tell her thank you. Promise me, okay?" The video ended. Richard stared at the blank screen, his entire world reorganizing itself around this new truth his daughter had known for months. She'd forgiven Carmen before he even knew there was something to forgive. And she'd kept the secret to protect them both. "She made me promise not to tell you until..." Carmen's voice broke. "Until it was almost too late. She didn't want you spending her last days angry." Richard looked up at Carmen, really looked at her for the first time. Not as the maid who faded into the background. Not as the nurse who'd made a terrible mistake. But as the young woman who destroyed her own life trying to atone for something that wasn't entirely her fault. Who'd spent 3 years watching over a dying child, knowing that love would only make the inevitable loss more painful. "Why didn't you just disappear?" Richard asked hoarsely. "You could have run. Started over somewhere else." "Because running doesn't fix anything," Carmen whispered. "I tried for 6 months after they fired me. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat. Kept seeing those babies' faces. I thought about ending it, honestly. But then I realized, maybe I couldn't save the ones who'd already died, but Emma was still alive. Maybe I could save her. Maybe that's why I survived when I wanted to die. So I tracked down your family, faked my resume, and got hired. Every day I was terrified you'd recognize me, but you never did. Rich people don't really see their staff." The truth of that statement cut deep. "Tell me about Dr. Collins," Richard said. "Everything." Carmen pulled out the worn journal, the one she'd shown him in Emma's room, and opened it to pages filled with medical terminology, research notes, and desperate phone calls logged over 3 years. Dr. Rebecca Collins runs an experimental hematology program at Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles. She's been working on a treatment for blood disorders caused by contaminated transfusions. Specifically the kind Emma has. The procedure involves a complete bone marrow transplant from a living donor, combined with a new gene therapy that rewrites the damaged DNA. It's only been tested on adults. Never on a child. The success rate is 60%. And for the donor? Carmen's jaw tightened. 30% survival. The extraction process is extensive. They have to harvest enough marrow to completely replace Emma's blood-forming cells. For an adult donor giving to a child, that means taking almost everything. My body might not recover. Would you make this choice? Like and subscribe, you'll need to see this. Richard's mind raced through calculations, risks, legal implications. When can we do it? Carmen's eyes widened. You're saying yes. I'm saying I need to talk to Dr. Collins. Tonight. Now. Can you arrange it? Carmen nodded, already dialing. Within minutes, she had Dr. Collins on speakerphone, a woman in her 50s with a crisp, no-nonsense voice that immediately commanded respect. "Mr. Hamilton," Dr. Collins said. "Carmen has briefed me on Emma's condition. I've reviewed her medical files. I'm not going to lie to you, this is experimental, dangerous, and there are no guarantees. But it's her only shot. Without intervention, she has 2 weeks maximum. With the procedure, we might give her a lifetime. What do you need from me?" Richard asked. "Get Emma to Los Angeles within 48 hours. I'll need to run preliminary tests on both her and Carmen to confirm compatibility and prepare for surgery. The window is tight, Mr. Hamilton. Emma's body is shutting down faster than the hospital's timeline suggested." Richard's blood went cold. "What are you saying?" Dr. Collins paused. "I'm saying you don't have 2 weeks anymore. Based on the blood work Carmen sent me, you have 72 hours before Emma's organs start failing. After that, she'll be too weak for surgery. You need to move now." The phone slipped from Richard's hand. 72 hours. 3 days. He looked at Carmen, who'd gone pale but stood straighter, resolution hardening her features. "I'll prep everything for transport," Carmen said. "I'll have bags packed, medical equipment arranged, you're jet-fueled." "Why?" Richard interrupted. "Why are you doing this? Really? Is it just guilt?" Carmen met his eyes, and for the first time, Richard saw past the guilt to something deeper, something that looked almost like peace. "Because Emma taught me that forgiveness isn't something you earn," Carmen said softly. "It's something you accept. She forgave me 6 months ago. Now I need to forgive myself. And the only way I know how is to give her the life I took." Before Richard could respond, both their phones erupted with alerts. Carmen grabbed hers first, her face draining of all color. "What is it?" Richard demanded. Carmen's voice came out as barely a whisper, "Emma's vitals are crashing. She's seizing." They ran from the chapel, footsteps echoing through empty hallways. Richard's heart hammered against his ribs as they burst into Emma's room. Doctors and nurses swarmed around her small body, machines screaming, monitors flashing red. "Clear," someone shouted. Emma's back arched off the bed as they shocked her. Richard couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The world reduced to the flatline sound, that horrible, endless tone that meant. "We've got a pulse," a nurse called out. "She's stabilizing. Every second counts now. Like and subscribe, this race against time has just begun." Richard sagged against the wall, gasping. Carmen gripped his arm to hold him up. The lead doctor approached, grim-faced. "Mr. Hamilton, Emma's body is deteriorating faster than projected. We need to discuss end-of-life measures." "No," Richard cut him off. "We're transporting her to Los Angeles. Tonight." "Sir, she's far too unstable for." "I don't care. Make it happen." The doctor looked like he wanted to argue but saw something in Richard's face that stopped him. He nodded curtly and left to make arrangements. Richard turned to Carmen. "Call Dr. Collins. Tell her we're coming now." "And Carmen?" He paused, the words catching in his throat. "Thank you. For everything you've done. For loving her when I was too busy to." Carmen's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled, a real smile, the first he'd ever seen from her. "Let's go save your daughter, Mr. Hamilton." They moved toward the door, but Richard's phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. He glanced at the screen, and his blood turned to ice. If Carmen undergoes that procedure, she won't be the only one who dies. "Stop now." Richard stared at the message on his phone, the words glowing like a death threat in the dim airport hangar. If Carmen undergoes that procedure, she won't be the only one who dies. "Stop now." His private jet sat fueled and ready on the tarmac at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey, its engines humming softly in the pre-dawn darkness. 30 feet away, paramedics loaded Emma's medical transport pod into the cargo hold, her small unconscious form surrounded by monitors and 4 lines. Carmen supervised every movement, her face carved from stone despite the exhaustion that hollowed her eyes. Richard's head of security, Marcus Chen, appeared at his elbow. "Sir, we traced the number. Burner phone, purchased cash in Midtown 3 hours ago. Dead end." "Someone's watching us," Richard said, his voice low. "Someone who knows exactly what we're planning." Marcus pulled out his tablet, swiping through security footage. "I've checked all hospital surveillance. No suspicious activity." "But," he hesitated. "But what?" "Your investment firm's server was accessed remotely tonight. Someone pulled files on Castellano Pharmaceuticals." The name hit Richard like a punch to the gut. Castellano, the company that had covered up the contaminated blood. The company his hedge fund had profited from. He'd spent the last 2 hours digging through his own financial records, following a money trail that made him sick. In 2016, Castellano Pharmaceuticals faced a massive lawsuit over tainted blood products. Richard's firm, Hamilton Capital, held $40 million in their stock. When the lawsuit mysteriously disappeared, buried under settlements and non-disclosure agreements, Castellano's stock soared. Richard's investment had grown by $8 million. Blood money. Literally. "Pull everything we have on Castellano," Richard ordered. "Board members, executives, legal teams. I want to know who has the most to lose if this story goes public." Marcus nodded and disappeared. Richard looked back at the threatening text. Whoever sent it knew about Dr. Collins. Knew about the procedure. Knew that exposing the truth would destroy Castellano's carefully constructed cover-up. Which meant they'd do anything to stop it. Carmen approached, her medical bag slung over her shoulder. "Emma's stable for transport. We need to leave now if we're going to make Dr. Collins' surgical window. Richard pocketed his phone without showing her the threat. No point adding another weight to the burden she already carried. Let's go. The jet lifted off at 4:47 a.m., climbing through clouds that looked bruised and angry in the early morning light. Richard sat across from Emma's medical pod, watching her chest rise and fall with mechanical precision, each breath assisted by machines keeping her alive. Carmen sat beside him, silent and still, her hands folded in her lap like she was praying. "Tell me about before," Richard said quietly. Carmen looked up, confused. Before? Before Mercy General. Before the mistake. Who were you? Her past will destroy everything. Like and subscribe now. Carmen's expression flickered, surprise, then something that might have been gratitude for being seen as more than her worst moment. "I was nobody special," she said softly. "Grew up in Atlanta, raised by my grandmother after my mom died. Gran cleaned houses her whole life, wanted better for me. So I studied. Got scholarships. Nursing school was everything to me, a way out, a way to matter. My first job at Mercy General felt like winning the lottery." She paused, her jaw tightening. "I was 23 years old. Barely 6 months on the job. They assigned me to pediatrics because I was good with scared kids, could make them laugh even when they were hurting. That day, the day Emma came in, I was working a double shift. Exhausted. But I was so careful. I checked that blood bag 3 times. The label said it was clean, tested, safe. How did you find out it wasn't? 2 weeks later, babies started dying. 5 in the first month. Hospital administration called an emergency meeting, told us there'd been a quality control issue with a blood supplier. They had lawyers there, made us sign papers swearing we wouldn't talk about it. Said if we did, we'd be criminally liable for the deaths." Carmen's hands trembled. "I was terrified. I'd killed babies. Babies whose parents trusted me. The hospital fired me the next day, told me if I ever tried to work in healthcare again, they'd make sure I went to prison. So I disappeared. Worked under the table, cleaning, serving, whatever kept me alive. But every night, I'd search online for the babies from that contaminated batch. Trying to find out who survived. And you found Emma. Last one alive. By then it had been 3 years. I saw your family's name in a Forbes article, Billionaire Richard Hamilton's daughter overcomes medical challenges. I knew it was her. So I tracked you down, faked my resume, got hired. I thought maybe if I could keep her safe, watch over her, it would mean something. Richard studied this woman who'd carried 3 years of grief and guilt alone. You could have told me the truth from the beginning. And you would have destroyed me, Carmen said simply. I wasn't afraid of that. I was afraid you'd fire me, and then I couldn't protect her anymore. Couldn't be there when, her voice cracked. When she needed someone who understood what was killing her. The jet hit turbulence, and Emma's monitors beeped urgently. Carmen was on her feet instantly, checking vitals, adjusting 4 flows with practiced efficiency. Richard watched her work, saw the skill, the care, the absolute devotion in every movement. This wasn't just guilt. This was love. Richard's phone buzzed again. Another message, check your email. Then decide if she's worth it. He opened his email with shaking hands. The message contained a single attachment, a scanned document from 2016. A board meeting agenda for Castellano Pharmaceuticals. And there, listed among the attendees, was a name that made Richard's blood run cold. Richard Hamilton, Hamilton Capital, Primary Investor Relations. He'd been in the room. When they discussed the contaminated blood. When they decided to bury the evidence instead of issuing a recall. When they chose profit over children's lives. He didn't remember the meeting, just another Tuesday morning board seat, another quarterly update on pharmaceutical investments. He'd probably been answering emails on his phone while they discussed minimizing exposure and containing the narrative. Some truths destroy everything. Like and subscribe before it's too late. Richard's hands shook so badly he nearly dropped the phone. He'd profited from the poisoning that killed his daughter. His wealth was built on the same corruption that destroyed her. Mr. Hamilton. Carmen touched his arm. Are you okay? He couldn't answer. Couldn't breathe. The cabin walls closed in as the full weight of his complicity crushed him. A third message arrived: walk away now. Keep your money, your reputation. Let nature take its course. Or expose the truth and lose everything. The choice crystallized with brutal clarity. If Carmen underwent the procedure and they exposed Castellano's cover-up, Richard would be implicated. His firm would collapse. His billions would evaporate in lawsuits and criminal investigations. He'd lose everything he'd spent 30 years building. But Emma would live. If she survived. Carmen was watching him now, her dark eyes seeing too much. Someone's threatening you, aren't they? How did you? You keep looking at your phone like it's a bomb about to explode. And you have that look people get when they realize the cost is higher than they thought. She leaned forward, her voice fierce and low. Whatever they're threatening you with, don't let it stop this. Emma deserves to live. That's all that matters. Easy for you to say, Richard snapped. You have nothing left to lose. The words came out harsher than he intended, but Carmen didn't flinch. You're right, she said quietly. I don't. I lost everything 3 years ago. But you? You still have a choice between your empire and your daughter. Choose wrong, and you'll spend the rest of your life knowing you picked money over her life. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. Mr. Hamilton, we're 30 minutes from landing. There's a situation. Richard grabbed the cockpit phone. What situation? 2 black SUVs have been following our flight path on the ground. They're heading toward Cedar Sinai. Sir, I think someone's planning to intercept us at the hospital. Richard's blood went cold. Can you change our landing location? Already coordinated with Dr. Collins. We're diverting to a private airfield in Burbank. She'll meet us there with a mobile surgical unit. But Mr. Hamilton, whoever these people are, they have resources. They knew our flight plan. The threats weren't empty. Castellano was making their move. The next 60 minutes decide everything. Like and subscribe. Richard ended the call and turned to Carmen. We're being followed. When we land, things are going to move fast. Are you ready for this? Carmen's jaw set with determination. I've been ready for 3 years. The jet began its descent through thick coastal fog. Emma's monitors maintained their steady rhythm, fragile but holding. Richard pulled up the financial documents on his tablet, staring at his own signature on Castellano board minutes, dated October 2016. The month after Emma received the contaminated transfusion. He'd been in that room when they voted to suppress the evidence. He'd probably voted yes without even looking up from his phone. Marcus appeared from the back cabin, his expression grim. Sir, I finished the deep dive on Castellano's current board. Their CEO is Victor Castellano, founder's grandson. He has everything to lose if this comes out. The company's about to launch a new blood product line worth $2 billion. If the contamination scandal resurfaces, it's over. So he sent the threats. More than threats, sir. I found something else. Marcus handed over his tablet. Carmen Davis isn't her real name. Richard's world tilted. What? Her birth name is Carmen Rodriguez. She changed it legally 4 years ago, right after Mercy General fired her. But that's not the strange part. 6 months ago, someone made a $50,000 deposit into her bank account. Untraceable offshore transfer. Carmen stood abruptly, her face going pale. That's not. From a shell company owned by Castellano Pharmaceuticals, Marcus finished. Richard rose slowly, his voice deadly quiet. Carmen. What did you do? Nothing. I swear to God, I don't know anything about. The jet's wheels hit the tarmac hard. Through the window, Richard saw the two black SUVs already waiting on the edge of the airfield. And standing beside them, illuminated by the runway lights, was a tall man in an expensive suit. Marcus zoomed in with his phone camera, ran facial recognition. Victor Castellano. He's here. The plane taxied to a stop. Emma's monitors beeped steadily, oblivious to the danger closing in. Carmen gripped Richard's arm, her voice desperate. I don't know why they sent me money. But I know this, if we don't get Emma into surgery in the next hour, she dies. Whatever Victor Castellano wants, it can wait. What if he's here to stop us? Carmen met his eyes, and Richard saw steel beneath the fear. Then he'll have to kill me first. The jet's door opened. Victor Castellano walked across the tarmac alone, his hands visible and empty. He stopped 10 feet from the plane and called out. Mr. Hamilton. We need to talk. Because Carmen hasn't told you the whole truth about why she's really here. Carmen's face drained of all color. She swayed on her feet, gripping the seat back for support. No, she whispered. He can't. Victor smiled, cold and triumphant. Tell him, Carmen. Tell him about your daughter. Carmen's knees buckled. Richard caught her arm before she hit the tarmac, but she was shaking so violently he could barely hold her upright. What is he talking about? Richard demanded, his voice cutting through the pre-dawn cold like a blade. Victor Castellano stepped closer, his expensive leather shoes crunching on the gravel. He was younger than Richard expected, maybe 45, with slicked back hair and a smile that belonged in a boardroom negotiation, not on an airport tarmac at 5 in the morning. Carmen hasn't been entirely honest with you, Mr. Hamilton, Victor said smoothly. That $50,000 we deposited in her account? It wasn't a bribe. It was child support. Richard's grip on Carmen's arm tightened. Explain. Now. Carmen's voice came out broken, barely a whisper. Sophia. Her name is Sophia. Who is Sophia? My daughter. Carmen's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. She's 7 years old. She has the same blood disorder as Emma. From the same contaminated batch. The world stopped spinning. Richard released Carmen's arm, stumbling backward like she'd physically struck him. You have a daughter who's dying, and you never. He couldn't finish the sentence. Victor's smile widened. Carmen gave her daughter the tainted blood herself. Tried to treat a fever at home using hospital supplies she'd taken. Ironic, isn't it? The nurse who poisoned 16 babies also poisoned her own child. That's not what happened. Carmen screamed, her voice raw with 3 years of suppressed anguish. Sophia was sick. The hospital refused to treat her because I'd been fired, blacklisted. I had no insurance, no money, no way to help her. So yes, I used supplies I'd kept from Mercy General. I didn't know they were contaminated too. Richard's mind spun, trying to process this impossible truth. Where is she now? Foster care in Georgia. Carmen's voice broke completely. I couldn't take care of her. Working under fake names, moving constantly, barely making enough to eat. I gave her up so she'd have a chance at medical care, stability, something better than what I could give her. Everything you know is a lie. Like and subscribe now. Victor pulled out his phone, swiping to a photograph. This is Sophia. Beautiful little girl. Currently in a state facility in Atlanta, growing weaker every day. Just like Emma. The photo showed a small African-American girl with Carmen's eyes and a gap-toothed smile that didn't reach her face. She wore a hospital gown and held a stuffed rabbit, her thin arms marked with 4 bruises. Richard looked at Carmen, seeing her completely for the first time. Not just the woman carrying guilt for Emma, but a mother who'd sacrificed everything, including her own dying child, to save someone else's. "Why didn't you tell me?" Richard asked hoarsely. "Because if you knew I had my own daughter dying while I focused on yours, you'd think I was insane," Carmen whispered. "Or you'd think I was trying to manipulate you into saving both of them. But I'm not. The donor match only works one way. I can save Emma or Sophia, but not both. And I chose Emma because," her voice cracked, "because Sophia is suffering because of me. But Emma is innocent. She deserves the life I stole from her more than my daughter deserves the life I stole from her." The logic was devastating. The sacrifice unthinkable. Marcus appeared at Richard's shoulder, his tablet glowing. "Sir, I verified it. Sofia Rodriguez, age 7, currently at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. Same blood disorder. Critical condition." Victor's expression shifted from triumph to something almost sympathetic. "Here's what I'm offering, Mr. Hamilton. Walk away from exposing Castellano Pharmaceuticals. Keep the contamination scandal buried. In exchange, I'll pay for experimental treatment for both girls. Dr. Collins can attempt the procedure on Sophia first. If Carmen survives that donor surgery, she can recover and donate to Emma in 6 months." "Emma doesn't have 6 months," Richard said. "She has less than 60 hours. Then you have a choice to make." Victor's voice hardened. "Save Emma now and let Sophia die. Or give both girls a fighting chance by protecting my company's reputation." Carmen grabbed Richard's jacket, her fingers digging into the fabric. "Don't listen to him. Emma comes first. I already decided." "You don't get to decide anymore," Richard interrupted. He turned to Victor. "If I agree to your deal, what guarantees do I have that you'll actually treat Sophia?" "My word. Not good enough." Victor sighed, pulling out his phone again. "Fine. I'll wire $10 million into a medical trust for Sophia right now, with Dr. Collins as the administrator. Treatment starts immediately. But you sign a binding NDA about Castellano's involvement in the 2016 contamination. You bury your investigation. You never speak about this publicly." Behind them, Emma's monitors began beeping urgently. A paramedic called out, "Mr. Hamilton, her oxygen levels are dropping. We need to move her now." Time collapsed into a single brutal moment. Richard looked at Carmen's desperate face. At Victor's cold calculation. At the photo of Sophia, a little girl he'd never met but who was dying just like Emma. 2 children. 1 donor. One choice that would haunt him forever. The next decision changes 2 lives. Like and subscribe. "No deal," Richard said. Victor's expression darkened. "You're condemning that child to death. I'm not the one who poisoned her." Richard pulled out his own phone, hitting a speed dial. "But I'm the one who's going to make sure you pay for all of them." The call connected. "This is Richard Hamilton. I need you to conference in the FBI, the CDC, and every major news network. I have evidence of corporate manslaughter involving 16 children, and I'm going public in exactly 1 hour." Victor's face went white. "You'll destroy yourself. Your firm invested in my company. You were at board meetings when we discussed containment. You're complicit, Hamilton. This will ruin you. I know." Richard's voice was steady despite the fear coursing through him. "But my daughter is going to live in a world where the truth matters more than money. Even if I have to lose everything to give her that world." He turned to Carmen. "Get Emma prepped for surgery. We're doing this now." "But Sophia," Carmen's voice broke. "I'm putting $15 million in a trust for her treatment. Dr. Collins will coordinate a second surgical team. We save Emma first, then we save your daughter. Both of them. That's non-negotiable." Carmen stared at him, tears streaming down her face. "You'd do that? Even knowing it might bankrupt you? I've spent 30 years building an empire on money that doesn't matter. Time to spend it on something that does." Victor's phone rang. He glanced at it, his expression shifting from anger to panic. "My board is calling." "How did you?" "I sent them your threat messages 10 minutes ago," Marcus said calmly. "Along with the contamination files. They know everything." Victor's carefully constructed control shattered. "You have no idea what you've just done. Castellano Pharmaceuticals employs 15,000 people. You're going to destroy lives." "You already did that," Richard said coldly. 16 times. Now get off my airfield before I have you arrested." Victor backed away toward his SUVs, his voice carrying across the tarmac. "This isn't over, Hamilton. You'll regret this." The black vehicles peeled away, leaving only the sound of jet engines cooling and Emma's struggling breaths. Dr. Rebecca Collins emerged from a mobile medical unit parked nearby, a tall woman with silver hair pulled into a tight bun and eyes that had seen too many impossible cases. "Mr. Hamilton, I've been listening. If we're doing this, we need to start prep immediately. Carmen's surgery will take 8 hours. Emma's condition is deteriorating faster than projected." "Then let's stop talking and start saving lives," Richard said. They moved as one unit, Richard carrying Emma's 4-stand, Carmen gripping her medical bag, Marcus coordinating with the surgical team. The mobile unit was cramped but equipped with everything Dr. Collins needed for the most dangerous surgery any of them would ever witness. As they settled Emma onto the surgical table, Carmen pulled Richard aside one final time. "If I don't make it," she started. "You will." "If I don't," Carmen insisted, "promise me you'll tell Emma the truth. That I loved her like she was my own. That saving her gave my life meaning when I thought I'd never deserve meaning again." Richard gripped her hand. "Tell her yourself. After you wake up." Dr. Collins called out, "Carmen, we're ready for you." Carmen squeezed Richard's hand once more, then walked toward the surgical prep area. She paused at the doorway, looking back at Emma's small form surrounded by machines. "Mr. Hamilton." Carmen's voice was soft. "Thank you. For giving both my daughters a chance." She disappeared into the prep room. What happens next will break your heart. Like and subscribe. Richard sat beside Emma, watching her chest rise and fall. He pulled out his phone, staring at the message he drafted to his lawyers: instructions to liquidate Hamilton Capital, establish the medical trust, and prepare for the legal battle that would consume the rest of his life. His empire would fall. His reputation would be destroyed. But his daughter would live. The surgical suite doors closed. Dr. Collins' voice came over the intercom, beginning extraction procedure. "Mr. Hamilton, this is going to take a while. You should prepare yourself." Richard closed his eyes, feeling the weight of every decision that had led to this moment. 30 years of choices, some brilliant, some terrible, all leading to this single point where everything he'd built would either save his daughter or crumble to dust trying. Emma's hand twitched. Richard grasped it gently, and her eyes fluttered open, just for a moment. "Daddy?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Is Miss Carmen going to be okay?" "Yes, baby. She's going to be fine. You both are." Emma smiled, that gap-toothed grin that melted his heart. "Good. I want her to meet Sophia. Sisters should know each other." Richard's breath caught. "What did you say?" But Emma had already slipped back into unconsciousness. The intercom crackled. Dr. Collins' voice, tense and urgent: "We have a problem. Carmen's vitals are crashing. We need to." The line went dead. Alarms screamed from the surgical suite. Richard stood frozen, unable to breathe, as his entire world hung in the balance. Richard Hamilton didn't remember crossing the room. One moment he was frozen by Emma's bedside, The next his fists were pounding against the surgical suite's locked doors. "Open this door." His voice cracked, raw and desperate. What's happening to her? Through the small window, he could see controlled chaos, nurses moving in swift coordination, Dr. Collins barking orders Richard couldn't hear through the soundproof glass. Carmen lay motionless on the operating table, her dark skin ashen under the harsh lights, surrounded by machines flashing urgent warnings. Marcus grabbed Richard's shoulders, pulling him back. "Sir, you can't go in there. You'll contaminate the sterile field. She's dying." Richard's control shattered completely. "Carmen is dying because of me, because I pushed for this." The intercom crackled to life. Dr. Collins' voice was clipped, professional, terrifyingly calm. "Mr. Hamilton, Carmen's blood pressure dropped critically during the extraction. We're stabilizing her now. I need you to stay calm and stay out of this room. Do you understand?" Richard pressed his forehead against the glass, watching Carmen's chest barely move beneath the surgical drapes. "Is she going to make it?" A pause that lasted forever. "I don't know. Some sacrifices cost everything. Like and subscribe right now." The intercom cut off. Richard slid down the wall, his expensive suit jacket bunching around him, his carefully constructed world collapsing like a house of cards. Behind him, Emma's monitors maintained their steady rhythm. She was stable, sedated, unaware that the woman trying to save her life might not survive the attempt. Marcus crouched beside him, tablet in hand. "Sir, the news is breaking. CNN just ran the story. Billionaire Richard Hamilton exposes pharmaceutical cover-up involving daughter's poisoning. It's everywhere." Richard took the tablet with numb fingers. His own face stared back at him from a dozen news sites. The emails he'd sent, exposing Castellano Pharmaceuticals, his own complicity, the 16 dead children, had detonated like bombs across the financial world. Hamilton Capital's stock had dropped 40% in 12 minutes. His phone exploded with calls. Board members. Lawyers. Investors demanding answers. Richard silenced it all, his eyes fixed on Carmen's unmoving form through the surgical window. "There's more," Marcus said quietly. "The FBI has issued a warrant for Victor Castellano's arrest. His CFO is already cooperating. This is going to be the biggest pharmaceutical scandal in decades." "I don't care." Richard's voice was hollow. "None of it matters if Carmen dies trying to fix what we broke." Marcus hesitated, then pulled up another file. "Sir, there's something else you need to see. About Sophia." Richard looked up sharply. "What about her?" "After you put the money in the medical trust, I contacted Children's Healthcare of Atlanta directly. They ran new tests on Sophia this morning." Marcus' expression was grim. "She's worse than we thought. The same blood disorder, but more advanced. Even if Carmen survives this surgery, she won't be strong enough to donate again for at least a year. Maybe longer." The implications hit Richard like a physical blow. "So even if we save Emma, Sophia still dies. Unless we find another donor match." Richard stared at the tablet, at the medical file showing a 7-year-old girl with Carmen's eyes and less than 3 months to live. The girl Emma had somehow known about, called a sister before slipping into unconsciousness. "Run a compatibility test," Richard said suddenly. Marcus frowned. "Between who?" "Me and Sophia. I'm O-negative, universal donor. If there's even a chance." "Sir, bone marrow matching doesn't work like blood typing. The odds of you being compatible with a child who isn't biologically related are." "I don't care about odds." Richard's voice echoed through the medical unit. "Run the test. Now. Use whatever samples they took from me during Emma's admission." Marcus nodded and disappeared to make the call. Richard turned back to the surgical window. Dr. Collins was still working, her gloved hands moving with practiced precision. Carmen's monitor readings had stabilized, weak, but steady. The immediate crisis had passed. But for how long? The surgery continued for hours. Richard lost track of time, measuring it only in the slow drip of 4 bags and the periodic updates from Dr. Collins. Extraction 40% complete. Complications managed. She's still with us. Somewhere around hour 5, Emma woke briefly. Her eyes found Richard through the fog of sedation. "Daddy?" Her voice was a thread of sound. "I had a dream about Carmen. And another little girl who looked just like her." Richard's throat closed. "What happened in your dream, baby?" They were holding hands. And the little girl said, "Thank you for remembering me." Emma's eyes drifted closed again. "I think Carmen has been very sad for a long time." Richard gripped his daughter's small hand, tears streaming down his face. "She has, sweetheart. But maybe we can help change that. The next hour decides everything. Like and subscribe before it's too late." At hour 6, Marcus returned with results Richard hadn't expected. "Sir, you're not a match for Sophia. But I found something else." He pulled up genetic analysis reports that made Richard's vision blur trying to understand the medical terminology. "Your wife, Emma's mother, was adopted. You knew that, right?" Richard nodded slowly. Sarah had been adopted as an infant, raised by wealthy parents in Connecticut. She died 6 years ago in a car accident, never having located her biological family. I ran Sarah's genetic profile from her medical records against Sophia's. Marcus' expression was unreadable. "Sir, Sophia and Emma are cousins. Second cousins, but still blood relatives. Sarah and Carmen share the same great-grandmother." The world tilted. "What are you saying? Carmen didn't find your family by accident. She tracked down Emma because they're related. Distantly, but genetically connected. Which means," Marcus pulled up another screen, "Emma might be a bone marrow match for Sophia." Richard felt like he'd been punched in the chest. "Emma can save Sophia?" "Potentially. Compatibility testing would need to confirm it, but the genetic overlap makes it possible. Especially in cases of rare blood disorders where family matching is critical. But Emma is 8 years old and fighting for her own life." "I know." Marcus met his eyes. "But if Carmen's marrow saves Emma, and Emma's marrow could save Sophia, then we're asking a child to become a donor for another child she's never met." The ethical implications were staggering. The medical risks enormous. Emma would need months to recover from her own transplant before she could safely donate. Sophia might not have months. Through the surgical window, Dr. Collins was closing Carmen's incisions. The extraction was complete. Now came the waiting. Would Carmen's body survive the trauma? Would she wake up? Would the marrow she'd given be enough to save Emma? The intercom crackled. "Mr. Hamilton, extraction complete. Viability looks good. We're moving Carmen to recovery and beginning Emma's transplant procedure immediately. The next 12 hours are critical for both of them." Richard stood on shaking legs. "Dr. Collins, I need you to run a compatibility test between Emma and a patient in Atlanta. Sophia Rodriguez. If Emma survives this and can potentially donate." Dr. Collins appeared at the window, her mask pulled down, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. "You're asking if your daughter can save Carmen's daughter after Carmen saves yours?" "Yes." A long pause. "Then, get me Sophia's medical records. I'll run the analysis." "But Mr. Hamilton, even if they're compatible, you understand what you'd be asking of Emma? She's so young to carry that burden." "I know. But Emma already knows somehow. She sees Sophia in her dreams. Calls her sister." Richard's voice broke. "Maybe some connections run deeper than medicine can explain." Dr. Collins studied him through the glass, then nodded. I'll start the tests. Now excuse me, I have a little girl to save. The surgical team wheeled Carmen's unconscious body out of the suite into a recovery room. Richard caught a glimpse of her face, peaceful, still, hovering somewhere between life and death. They wouldn't know for hours if she'd wake up. If the procedure had been too much for her weakened body. If her sacrifice would cost her everything. Then Emma was wheeled into the surgical suite, so small on that enormous table, surrounded by machines and tubes and the desperate hope of everyone in that room. Everything comes down to this moment. Like and subscribe now. Dr. Collins began the transfusion process, introducing Carmen's harvested marrow into Emma's bloodstream. This is where we find out if the match holds, she said quietly. If Emma's body accepts the donor cells, they'll begin producing healthy blood within 72 hours. If it rejects them. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Richard stood at the observation window, watching his daughter receive life from the woman who'd accidentally taken it 9 years ago. The poetry of it was devastating. The risk unthinkable. The hope fragile as glass. Marcus handed him his phone. Sir, your lawyer's on the line. Says it's urgent about the congressional hearing they're demanding. And the SEC investigation. And the shareholders' lawsuit. Richard looked at the phone, then at Emma's small form on the operating table, then at Carmen in the recovery room fighting for her life. Tell them all to wait, he said quietly. The only thing that matters is in this room right now. He settled into a chair between the two rooms, keeping vigil over both patients. Waiting. Praying to a God he'd forgotten how to talk to. Watching 2 lives hang in the balance while his empire burned to ash around him. 3 hours later, Emma's monitors showed the first signs of change. New blood cells beginning to form. Healthy ones. Carmen's gift taking root. But in the recovery room, Carmen remained unconscious. Her vitals weak but stable. Hovering in that gray space between survival and surrender. Dr. Collins checked both patients, her expression carefully neutral. Emma's body is accepting the transplant. Initial signs are very promising. But Carmen, she hesitated. We won't know if she'll wake up until her body decides it wants to fight. Richard looked at the 2 rooms, at the 2 lives connected by guilt and grace and genetic miracles. Then we wait, he said. For as long as it takes. The sun rose over Burbank, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Inside the medical unit, time stopped. The world outside raged with scandal and investigation. But in these quiet rooms, 2 miracles fought to happen. Or none at all. 48 hours after the surgery, Carmen's eyes opened. Not slowly. Not peacefully. She gasped awake like someone surfacing from drowning, her hands clawing at the sheets, monitors erupting in urgent beeps. Richard lunged from his bedside chair, hitting the call button as nurses flooded the recovery room. Carmen, you're okay, he said, gripping her hand. You're alive. The surgery worked. Carmen's eyes darted wildly around the room, unfocused and terrified. Emma, she croaked, her voice destroyed from the breathing tube. Where's? She's alive. The transplant took. Your marrow saved her. Carmen's body went limp, tears streaming down her face. Not relief. Something deeper, absolution. 3 years of guilt bleeding out in silent sobs while machines confirmed she'd survived the impossible. Dr. Collins appeared, checking Carmen's vitals with practiced efficiency. Welcome back, Carmen. You gave us quite a scare. Your body shut down twice during recovery. We almost lost you. But you didn't. Carmen's voice was barely a whisper. And Emma? Stable. Her new blood cells are multiplying beautifully. She'll need months of monitoring, but the prognosis is excellent. Dr. Collins paused. You did it, Carmen. You saved her life. Carmen closed her eyes, exhaling 3 years of pain in a single breath. Can I see her? Tomorrow. You need to regain strength first. But Carmen was already trying to sit up, her weakened body refusing to cooperate. Richard gently pushed her back down. Rest, he said firmly. Emma isn't going anywhere. Neither are you. Carmen's gaze locked onto his, searching. Sophia. Did you? What happens next will change everything. Like and subscribe now. The genetic tests came back. Richard pulled up his phone, showing her the results he'd memorized. Emma and Sophia are second cousins through your maternal line and Sarah's adoption connection. Emma is a 73% bone marrow match for Sophia. Carmen's hand flew to her mouth. That's almost unheard of for non-siblings. Dr. Collins says it's enough. If Emma recovers fully, and she will, she can donate to Sophia in approximately 4 months. We've already coordinated with Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. Sophia's been moved to a private facility, receiving treatments to keep her stable until Emma's ready. How? Carmen's voice broke. How can you afford? I liquidated Hamilton Capital yesterday. 15 million went into Sophia's medical trust. Another 20 million is funding investigations into Castellano Pharmaceuticals and treatment for the other contamination victims' families. The rest will be gone soon, lawsuits, settlements, legal fees. Richard smiled, and it reached his eyes for the first time in years. Turns out I'm going to be relatively poor. It's liberating. Carmen stared at him like he'd grown a second head. You destroyed your own company. I built an empire on blood money. Literally. It needed to end. He leaned forward. But before it did, I made sure both your daughters would have everything they need. Sophia has the best care money can buy. And when Emma's strong enough, she'll save her cousin, her sister, just like you saved her. Carmen dissolved into tears, her body shaking with sobs too big for her weakened frame. Richard sat beside her, holding her hand while she cried out years of grief, guilt, and desperate hope finally realized. The next morning, they wheeled Carmen into Emma's room. Emma was awake, propped up on pillows, her color better than Richard had seen in months. When she saw Carmen, her face split into that gap-toothed grin. Miss Carmen. You're okay. Carmen couldn't speak. Could only stare at the little girl she'd poisoned and saved, alive and smiling despite everything. I knew you'd be okay, Emma said confidently. I saw you in my dreams. You and Sophia were holding hands. Carmen finally found her voice. You know about Sophia? I've always known. I just didn't know I knew until the dream started. Emma's 8-year-old logic was unshakable. Daddy says I can help her when I'm better. She's my cousin, right? That means she's family. Yes, baby, Carmen whispered. She's family. Then we have to save her. Like you saved me. Richard watched this exchange, his heart breaking and healing simultaneously. Two people connected by tragedy, choosing love over bitterness. Choosing redemption over revenge. Some miracles take sacrifice. Like and subscribe right now. 3 weeks later, Richard received the call he'd been dreading. Victor Castellano had been arrested. The FBI's investigation had uncovered 16 counts of negligent homicide, corporate fraud, and obstruction of justice. Castellano Pharmaceuticals was filing for bankruptcy. Hundreds of employees would lose their jobs. Richard felt the weight of that, the collateral damage of his choice to expose the truth. But when he looked at Emma, laughing as she video-called Sophia for the first time, watching the two little girls discover they had the same favorite color and both loved drawing, he knew some prices were worth paying. She looks just like you, Miss Carmen, Emma said, studying Sophia's face on the screen. Sophia smiled shyly. My foster mom says I'm getting stronger. The doctors say the new medicine is working. Good. Because when I'm all better, I'm gonna share my strong blood with you. Then we can be sisters for real." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "Really? You do that for me?" "Of course. That's what family does." After the call ended, Emma turned to Richard with sudden seriousness. "Daddy, when Sophia gets better, can she come live with us? And Miss Carmen too?" Richard glanced at Carmen, who'd been sitting quietly in the corner. Their eyes met across the room, and something unspoken passed between them, understanding, forgiveness, maybe even the beginning of something that looked like family. "I think that can be arranged," Richard said softly. "The ending will leave you in tears. Like and subscribe." 4 months later, Emma stood in a hospital room in Atlanta, wearing a red shirt and the biggest smile Richard had ever seen. She'd just completed the bone marrow donation procedure, easier for her than it had been for Carmen, her young body resilient and strong. In the room next door, Sophia received her cousin's gift. Carmen sat beside her daughter's bed for the first time in 3 years, holding her hand, whispering promises she could finally keep. Richard watched through the window as both girls slept, Emma in recovery, Sophia beginning her fight toward survival. 2 children connected by blood and miracle, saved by a woman who'd spent 3 years atoning for one terrible mistake. His phone buzzed with another lawsuit notification. Hamilton Capital was officially dissolved. His net worth had dropped from $3 billion to approximately $40 million, enough to live comfortably, not enough to matter in the circles he'd once commanded. He'd never been happier. 6 months after that, on a spring morning in Vermont, 3 people stood in Richard's garden. Emma, fully recovered, chased butterflies in her red shirt. Sophia, gaining strength daily, laughed as she tried to keep up, her resemblance to Carmen unmistakable. Carmen stood beside Richard, no longer wearing a maid's uniform but dressed as family. As the mother she'd finally earned the right to be. As the woman who'd sacrificed everything and somehow gained more than she'd lost. "Some mistakes become miracles," she whispered, watching both girls play. Richard nodded, slipping his hand into hers. "And some angels come disguised as guilt." The girls called for them to watch their butterfly dance, and Carmen ran to join them, scooping Sophia into her arms while Emma grabbed her other hand. 3 people connected by tragedy, rebuilt by grace, choosing to be family because forgiveness mattered more than blood. Richard pulled out his phone, taking a photo of the 3 of them. Carmen flanked by 2 girls who should have died but didn't, all 3 laughing in the sunshine of a morning that shouldn't exist but did. He'd lost an empire. He'd gained everything that mattered. And in the end, that was the only miracle that counted.